While the pain is still felt in Lebanon's pants over the attacks, the exploding pagers a couple of days ago and exploding walkie-talkies yesterday, Israel today seemingly stepped it up a little bit, both rhetorically and militarily. In Lebanon, militarily, rhetorically, the IDF spokesperson said we are entering a new stage in the war, referring to it as a war, acknowledging something that has been the case since October 7th or 8th or 9th or whenever Lebanon through Hezbollah started firing rockets at Israel daily. Um, Israel also stepped it up militarily. Now Israel has been retaliating in Lebanon on a pretty much daily basis, but today it kind of went in a bit stronger, bombed places with seemingly a little bit less regard for civilians, which of course is great. Again, all this we know from reports in the media, which are limited because Israel limits what they say, rightfully so, because when we're listening, so is the enemy, and of course, Hezbollah is a terrorist organization, and they will very much tell you what they want you to know in order to think what they want you to think. Um, but yeah, it looks like a new stage. Two Israeli soldiers were also killed, so Hezbollah is still very much active, despite the damage that has been done to some of their high-ranking officials through their communication devices. But this is a moment where we've been saying these past couple of days. This is a moment where Israel really needs to act, needs to step it up, and not just needs to step up the bombing campaign, which is very nice to see, but needs to really go in with full force. There are things that Israel has been getting away with in Gaza, and even that's difficult to say because hundreds of soldiers have died in Gaza, including four just yesterday. But getting away in a sense with fighting Hamas that they will not get away with in fighting Hezbollah in the north. Hezbollah has a much stronger army, has been able to do a lot more. Israel didn't have uh, any sort of control over any of Lebanon's border except the border with Israel. So anything that comes in from Syria or anywhere else, Israel can't really stop, although sometimes it did. So a war with Lebanon will be much more difficult, and yeah, and so the things Israel did in Gaza would be insufficient. They're insufficient in Gaza, but in Lebanon they could be disastrous. It could be a bloodbath for Israel unless Israel really clears whatever, first of all, clears whatever area it wants to enter with ground troops from the air, and also goes further into Lebanon, which we haven't seen yet. Now we see elements of it. For example, when Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, was giving a speech today, or at least a speech of him was broadcast today. Israeli fighter jets were flying in the skies of Beirut and breaking the sound barrier, which I've also heard referred to as some sort of act of aggression. Yeah, and anything Jews do but die, as we know, is unacceptable to many. But yeah, breaking the sound barrier is nice, but a lot more needs to be broken in Lebanon if Israel is to come out victorious, if Israeli citizens, refugees in their own country, are to be able to come back to their homes in the north of Israel. Welcome to the Daily Objective. This is the third day in a row that we're talking about events in Lebanon, and we're glad that we can finally talk about events in Lebanon in a seemingly more positive way than we have been in the past year or so. Israel is again starting to do things, and hopefully this is just the start of a real change of the conditions in the north of Israel and in Lebanon. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, as you've said, this is great to see. Also, Nasrallah, of course, had a speech today. So when it came to the jets flying over Lebanon, it was actually happening during the speech, which was really great to see. Uh, or hear about, and there have also been bombings. Again, great that it's happening. I again, I'm wondering why did this not happen at the same time? Again, because we, even with the explosions, they happen on one day and then on the second day. Although on the second day, I believe they were a bit more milder, so maybe it was just sort of like whatever was left. In a sense, maybe it couldn't have been coordinated. But again, with specifically with the bombings, I'm wondering why those were not coordinated. Um, but yeah, this is great to see. So, going to Nasrallah's speech, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, the head of Hezbollah, basically. So he called these coordinated explosions a declaration of war, which again is you know, I would like to say that I don't understand how can he like even say that, but I know why. It's because people in the West, the commentators, the pro Hezbollah, the pro terrorist crowd will eat it up. They will say that, and yeah, Nasrallah has said this has been the declaration of war. They were going easy, they were going mild, they didn't really want an escalation of the conflict, but Israel escalated this conflict into war. And that's why he said, because people will use it in this way. He also, of course, called it a massacre and a genocide that broke all the rules. Again, the guy is bombing Israel. What is this like about the rules? But obviously, when it comes to what rules is he talking about? Well, we had the UN vote. Just I'm not sure if it was yesterday or the day before. We had the vote on basically that what did it say, that Hamas needs to be dissolved, or that Hezbollah needs to stop attacking Israel, or that dictatorships shouldn't exist, or we are kicking out dictatorships out of UN. No, nothing like that. It was the fact that Israel should get out of occupied territories, or what's called, which whenever people say occupied territories, it like takes me a second to realize, what do they mean. Do they mean Gaza and West Bank, or do they mean all of Israel? Because many people use the occupied territories, and it basically means, yeah, the millions of Jews that are currently living in Israel should get out, basically. So we had the vote, again, completely pointless, which of course went to the which of course condemned condemned Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories. Um, so I also mentioned that, yeah, during his speech, Israeli jets were flying low over Beirut at the same time, which again, great to hear, great to see something like that. Because again, with these dictators, as I've said before, they need to be scared, and the fact that this is being done during the speech is again awesome to see. Especially, I'm not sure if the speech was live streamed. I imagine not. But if it was, that something great could have been seen on our televisions. Um, he, yeah, I just want to quickly just run through the
Sure.
points. He also thanked Lebanon's government, Iran, and health officials for their actions in the wake of the explosions. And also he addressed the Netanyahu and Kalan directly, saying that basically the Israeli citizens that live in the north but are currently not there, will not be able to go back until Israel stops. Let me see if I can find exact. Ends the war in Gaza and the West Bank. He says specifically. So
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of if it was live streamed, I would be very surprised if it's live streamed. Enric says the speech was sent by secure ticker tape. Yeah, I don't think Nasrallah would take such a risk. Yeah, it would have been great for such a speech to be live streamed, and for Nasrallah's day to have come right during that speech. By the way, we're going to continue what we've been doing these past couple of days. Send us your best comments in the chat, and we will, of course, read them out if appropriate, and if we see them, because we might not see all of them. Ideology says King of Leon, Sex on Fire now topping the Lebanon charts. That is worthy of being read. And yeah, there's some other comments. Bombing were not coordinated with pagers because it's been a situation of use it or lose it. Yeah, the reports were, and we discussed it yesterday. This was going to be the first step when Israel finally decided to go to war, to go to proper war rather than just be on the receiving end of a war. And yeah, somebody suspected something after they've been using these pagers for 6 months, and so Israel had to act immediately, or it would have been exposed before it happened. Then again, this war, this war should have happened a long time ago. Again, Israel should have acted immediately when its citizens' lives were put in danger and became basically impossible to live in the north. And yeah, Best Monster says um, a couple of things. Best Monster says Israel wouldn't need to worry so much about civilian casualties in Lebanon because it's not that densely populated. And in some aspects, it would be easier for Israel to fight Hezbollah than Hamas. Yes. First of all, yeah, it's not densely populated. There's also the ability to claim that there are innocent civilians. Look, we're going to talk in the reality show about some of the comments that Israel's haters have some of what they've said in the past couple of days, and for them, everybody is innocent except Jews. So people can say that no matter what. But the fact is, people who are actually non-combatants, let's put it that way, there's a relatively way smaller percent of the population in the south of Lebanon, just because nobody would stay in the south of Lebanon, and you don't have the excuse of, oh, I can't go to Egypt, I can't go to Israel, I can't get out. Which of course is not an excuse in Gaza. It's just way more difficult than it is if you're living in South Lebanon to get in a car or walk to the north of Lebanon. It's not that big a country. So yeah, there are really very few people who are not directly or very close to directly involved in Hezbollah. So in that sense, it would be easy. And of course, Israel, there are no hostages, no Israeli hostages. There's no excuse for Israel. Now, Israel will still try to avoid casualties on the other side. We know that's how Israel fights, and it's very unfortunate and has cost Israel victory in Gaza, and very well might cost Israel victory in Lebanon. But the things that supposedly are the reasons why Israel isn't fully fighting in Gaza do not exist in Lebanon on the one hand, and on the other hand, as I mentioned, what does exist is a much stronger army in the army of Hezbollah. Now, one of the things that we keep saying, and I'm going to reiterate, is that Israel needs to treat Lebanon as the enemy. And part of treating Lebanon as the enemy is Lebanon has an army. Now, they can use that army to join Hezbollah and fight against Israel, which, if you look at their official statements of the prime minister, of the foreign minister in the past couple of days, is what's more likely. But they can also use that army to fight against Hezbollah. Now, if Israel really goes in, and they would have to act militarily first and diplomatically second, but say, look, we are going to destroy your country, but we don't have to. We can just destroy just Hezbollah. We'll attack them from the south, you'll attack them from the north, and it'll be over, and then we'll part as frenemies. This should be the pitch of Israel to Lebanon, and it should be backed up with a guarantee that if Hezbollah, if the Lebanese army does not fight, to destroy, to eliminate Hezbollah for good, not to severely damage their abilities so that it takes another 10, 15 years until the next war, which is going to be worse than the previous war, as we've seen before. Yeah, that's what I'd like to see. I guarantee you it's not going to happen, but as always, I hope I'm wrong. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, so a few points. Yeah, the fact that it's easier to fight Hezbollah, someone has mentioned. Uh, again, I'm not so sure about that. Again, Hezbollah is much stronger, is much more organized, is much more able to resist. That's why I think it won't be easy, and Israel will not be able to get away with not going fully in. And I've been talking about this a lot. Israel has to realize it's like facing like existential crisis. Like this is not like many nations in the area are either directly hostile, directly attacking countries like or organizations slash countries like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iran. Many of them Iranian proxies. But the rest of the Arab countries are not allies either. You have, you, just on your border, you have Egypt. Through Egyptian border, many Hamas has basically been supplied. You have Jordan. We commented on the terrorist attack. People in Jordan were celebrating the terrorist attack against Israel. Not to mention, you have terrorist attacks also coming out of West Bank. They must be supplied from somewhere. Uh, Again, in the region, you also have Syria, you have Iraq. Again, none of these are any sort of like allies of Israel, and Israel needs to realize that yeah, it might face actual existential crisis. Donald Trump during the presidential debate has said that Israel will be gone in 2 years if Kamala Harris gets elected. And while I don't specifically like the fact that Israel's existence is determined by who is the president in the United States, uh, the fact is that Israel is it's not going to be easy. And it is in real danger and needs to be careful about that. And the fact that we've been talking about how weak it has been on Gaza, but it will not be able to afford being weak on Hezbollah. We've seen attacks from Hezbollah, the rocket attacks from Hezbollah are not stopping. Even when they did the when the pager attack, uh well, if Israel did it, uh, y- you know, for a little bit, the attacks from Hezbollah stopped, but they were quickly resumed, and in a sense, now they're back to normal. So no no like small attack like this or like small disruption is going to be enough to end this. It will need to be strong, or it will have to, what's really the alternative? The only alternative is some sort of ceasefire. But again, it has tried it in the past many times with Hamas, with Hezbollah. It's been in Lebanon many times. It has been attacking directly Hezbollah in Lebanon, and we're back here. Nothing has changed because again, Israel didn't finish the job. It needs to realize that that's the only way out, really. And so you also mentioned, well, just quickly commenting on this, no, in a sense, it might be easier because there are no hostages. While I kind of agree on that, it's also I'm sort of wondering because I feel like when it comes to sort of the Western response, it looks like the only reason why Israel, in a sense, is even uh, uh, given the right to protect itself by being in Gaza is the fact that there are hostages, and if there is like a actual ground invasion of Lebanon, I'm wondering how the world community will look at it.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I'll talk about that in a second because the history of Israel's failures in Lebanon is important here. But the issue of a ceasefire, a ceasefire is possible. If Israel says, yeah, we're going to pull out our troops from Gaza, it could be that Hezbollah will agree to stop firing at the north for now. But Hezbollah only exists in order to exterminate the Jews, just like Hamas. So any such ceasefire is a regrouping and rearming effort. It is we will not currently, for the time being, fight until we decide that we are able to do it again. Hezbollah has suffered losses even before these pager bombings, the testicle
Aegis.
genocide, if you will. Yeah, they've suffered losses because Israel does bomb terrorists here and there pretty much daily in retaliation to what Hezbollah does, but it's not something that changes the situation forever. And looking at the history of the situation, Israel, went into Lebanon in 82, going after Arafat and stayed there until 2000. Now, This was a problematic situation Israel wanted to get out of, and it got out in the worst possible way. It ran away. It gave Hezbollah a great victory that was then used in Hezbollah's PR the same way when Israel leaves Gaza, with Hamas still in existence.
And it's
Hamas will
still
use.
and it's used until now. Nasrallah has mentioned it in the speech
Yeah,
again.
yeah, and that's the thing. The victory, and it was a victory because Israel left without destroying Hezbollah. And Israel had, by the way, back then Israel had the South Lebanese Army, which was Lebanese people fighting alongside Israel against Hezbollah. I think there's a whole story there where they were given Israeli citizenship, brought into Israel, not treated as well as they should have been. And Israel kind of screwed that up pretty badly. There were some cases of people actually choosing to go to Lebanon, back to Lebanon, knowing they would be likely tried for treason. And Yeah, so and what happened later was 2006. There was a war. Hezbollah kidnapped some soldiers. Israel went to war with them, and that war did not end in Israeli victory. Let's put it that way. It ended again in Hezbollah losing some terrorists, losing some weapons, using some weapons, and killing. I believe it was well over 100 Israelis, but that's from memory. But definitely causing damage. Rockets were hitting further south than they are at the moment. And by the way, that was something Nasrallah said today as well. We're going to expand the part of Israel in the north that is uninhabitable. And I believe him. I believe that that's something that Hezbollah, if they want to do, they can do it until that moment that Israel says enough is enough, and we are fighting back. Couple of quick comments in the chat. Best Monster says, I've heard that Israel knows his location, referring to Nasrallah. Uh, we can see some of the results of Israeli intelligence, so it wouldn't really surprise me. But if it's true, it would piss me off because again, why not kill him? Yeah, you're not getting rid of Hezbollah by killing him, but you are certainly hurting them a lot, and that's a step in the right direction and not a small one. Show Because it doesn't just kill the figurehead; it shows what the pager and walkie-talkie bombings showed, which is you are not safe anywhere if you choose to fight against Israel. Ouija says, what kind of candles are being passed out in Gaza and candies are being passed out in Gaza and Lebanon today? Pie and nuts. Well done. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Uh, Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, will Israel depart from Judea and Samaria, an old city now? I hope not. I also hope not. But look, they're sending troops from Gaza to the north. Um, there are questions there. You can say, okay, we have to move troops to the north because we have to fight there. That's one thing. But A, you haven't finished the job in Gaza, and you never will as long as you fight with, caring more about avoiding civilian casualties on the enemy side than achieving victory. And you're sending a message to Hamas, and if you're sending the forces up north just as a show of force, that would be terrible. And in Judea and Samaria, again, uh, what's done in Gaza is insufficient for Gaza and would be insufficient for Judea and Samaria. Much more needs to be done militarily, and it will be done. The question is, will it be done after the next October 7th? My preference is before. I think, unfortunately, the Israeli government doesn't share my view.
So just quickly about the question, will Israel depart from Judea and Samaria and Old City now? I cannot see it. We had the disengagement from Gaza, and that was like less than 10,000 settlers basically being removed from Gaza, Israeli settlers. In the West Bank, it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Again, it definitely couldn't be done under this the current government. I don't think any of the parties would support it. I mean, the parties are barely they are even opposed to stopping the expansion of it, seeing like, and I'm not sure if you would even find it in the opposition, like complete departure. I mean, in the opposition, you might find like, stopping the expansion. But again, that's, those are Israeli citizens. Those are not some sort of like, those are people. And again, Israel has been there for how many, like 60 years? I mean, wait, what is it? What are we at?
It's coming
Yes.
up on 60 years.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's never going to happen, by the way.
Yeah,
But
but again, I'm just talking like practically. It's people are living there. People own property there. People have been living there since they lived. Again, requiring any sort of going out would be again insane. I could never see it. And if it were to happen, I think it would be just a complete surrender of Israel. Like Israel is done at that point. Like if it were ever got to the point that it would basically like completely break over just to appease appease who, appease dictators, appease authoritarians, appease like Islamists in the region. That's who is voting against Israel in the UN. Although
yeah.
many Western countries are too. So
Yeah. Oh, by the way, when you mentioned the UN vote, you mentioned, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. I think it was both. There was one on
well,
the arms embargo against Israel. There was one against about Israel having to leave the UN. That I would vote for, having to leave Judea and Samaria. And yeah, by the way, I didn't answer your question, PC. I went on a rant, which I stand by. But Purple Pulp says zero chance in response to PC. Zero chance. 750,000 Jews live there. Two-state delusion is dead and buried. I don't think the last part is true, unfortunately. I wish it was. But no, I've said in the past, for me, what moved me away from the Israeli left as a teenager was my complete inability to understand, which I still have, an inability to understand how a future Palestinian state can live side by side in peace and security with Israel while not allowing a single Jew to live in their territory. So, yeah, I don't see how this could ever happen if the Palestinians ever became civilized enough for any negotiation on a Palestinian state to actually go anywhere. They would have to accept that Jews live there, and I think that's pretty much guaranteed. Look, sometimes when you look at different cultures and you look at different societies, different aspects of what's going on in the world, you look at it through some specific prism, some the eyes of I don't know, something. When you look at like the education system in among the Palestinians, Farfour is often the exemplar of how kids are treated, how kids are taught to hate Jews. The Farfour of Britain, of British adults, let's say, is Owen Jones, and yeah, Owen Jones has really his journey is an interesting one. We're not going to talk about it, but we will talk about his response, some other anti-Israel people's responses over the last couple of days. They've really struggled. It's difficult when you don't have Hamas saying women and children, and yet you need to push that line in order to get people to hate Jews as much as you do. Owen Jones has succeeded in at least doing that on like managing to tweet. But we will be talking about that on the reality show, which starts in a couple of minutes. By the way, yeah, I can't reply to Owen Jones on Twitter because he blocked me, but I do point out similar people. So make sure you follow me, Razi Ginzberg, on X, not Twitter. Daniel, where can people find you other than here?
You can find me on my YouTube channel called Damn Dan. And I just do quickly comment. Someone is saying it's gonna take a long time for Palestine to become civilized. We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen with the Germans. We've seen it happen with Japanese people. And again, those were kind of people that I would separate them from, for example, the Russians, who have never lived under like a free nation. Germans and Japanese before World War II have not lived under a free nation, under like an actual Western nation either. It took one war, it took one decimation, it took one basically saying of you failed hard, and your philosophy has led you here, and you need to give up on that. And that is all it takes for the philosophy to change. And then has never happened to the Palestinians. Once that happens, we can see some change.
Yeah, I think it's a much longer journey for the Palestinians, but yes, they are human beings. They have free will. They can choose a different path, and so can Owen Jones. Make sure you join us in a couple of minutes on the reality show. The title of that is Owen Jones Sings the Blues for Terrorists' Balls. Yeah, that was a last minute title. Sorry. It's the best we could come up with, but it'll be a great show. So we'll see you there in a couple of minutes.